Welcome back. If you've spent any time at weddings, you've probably heard today's chapter. 1 Corinthians 13 is one of the most read passages in the entire Bible, and probably one of the most misunderstood. People often hear it as a beautiful poem about romantic love, or maybe a lovely sentiment for some special occasion. But if you know the context, and by now in this series I hope you do, Paul didn't write this for a wedding ceremony. He wrote it for a church that was tearing itself apart. He wrote it for people who were arguing over spiritual gifts, dividing into factions, looking down on each other, and generally treating love as optional. I think that's what makes this so much more powerful than it might first appear. So let's read it together. Verses 1 through 3. If I speak with the languages of men and of angels, but don't have love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but don't have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my goods to feed the poor, and if I give my body to be burned, but don't have love, it profits me nothing. So right out of the gate, Paul takes everything the Corinthians were proud of, all their spiritual gifts, their knowledge, all their generosity, and he says without love, all of that is worthless. Actually worse than worthless. He says it becomes noise, clanging cymbals, empty sound that fills the air and accomplishes nothing. Think about that image for a second. A clanging cymbal is loud. It gets attention. It even has its place in the music. But a cymbal alone, with no melody around it, no song to serve, it's just noise. Paul is saying that spiritual gifts without love are exactly like that. They can be impressive and they can be loud, but ultimately hollow. This would have been a direct challenge to the Corinthians, who were showing off their gift of tongues and their spiritual knowledge. You can have all that, Paul says, and still be nothing. Verses 4 through 7. Love is patient and is kind. Love doesn't envy. Love doesn't brag. Is not proud. Doesn't behave itself inappropriately. Doesn't seek its own way. Is not provoked. Takes no account of evil. Doesn't rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Bears all things. Believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Now, Paul is defining what love actually looks like, and he does it entirely in verbs, not feelings or words or intentions, but your actions. 14 of them. 7 things love does, and 7 things love doesn't do. It's worth slowing down here a little bit, because if you read this list not as a wedding reading, but more as a mirror, it can be a little uncomfortable. Love is patient. It actually waits for the good of another person, even when waiting costs you something. Love is kind, not just polite or nice, but actually moving toward the good of someone else. Love doesn't envy. This one cuts right to the heart of what was happening in Corinth, where people were jealous of each other's spiritual gifts. Love doesn't brag, isn't proud, which in the same way also points right at the Corinthians, who were puffed up with knowledge and status. Love doesn't seek its own way. It isn't looking out for number one. It gives up what it wants for the sake of another person's good, which again is exactly what Paul spent chapters 8, 9, and 10 trying to teach them. Love takes no account of evil, which literally means it doesn't keep a running record of wrongs. There's no tallies. It doesn't store up offenses, waiting for the right moment to bring them back out. And love doesn't rejoice in unrighteousness, meaning it doesn't quietly enjoy it when someone who hurt you gets what's coming to them. And then, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Not blindly or naively, but with persistence. It keeps going. There's no cutoff point. The Catechism of the Catholic Church actually quotes these very lines when describing charity. The theological word for this kind of love, it calls Paul's description here an incomparable depiction of charity, and says that charity is not just one virtue among many, it is superior to all the virtues, and the source and the goal of the whole Christian life. St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the Church's greatest theologians, even went further. He described charity as the friendship of man for God, and called it the most excellent of the virtues, the one that gives all other virtues their meaning and direction. Here's what I think is the single most important thing to understand about this list. Paul is not describing how love feels. He's describing what love does. So this is not a description of an emotion that comes and goes depending on the circumstances. It's a description of a commitment, a choice, that you make regardless of how you feel on any given day. Think about a long marriage, not the wedding day. Any couple can feel romantic on their wedding day. Think about year 15 or year 30. The morning someone wakes up tired and irritable, and the other person still makes coffee and asks how they're doing. The season when one spouse is sick and the other one quietly carries everything without keeping score. That's not a feeling, that's a decision made every morning that says, I am for you, regardless. That's the shape of love Paul is describing. Verses 8 through 12. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will be done away with. Where there are various languages, they will cease. Where there is knowledge, it will be done away with. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is complete has come, then that which is partial will be done away with. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I felt as a child. I thought as a child. Now that I have become a man, I have put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror, dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, even as I was also fully known. Paul's making a distinction here that's easy to miss. Spiritual gifts, even the most dramatic ones, prophecy, tongues, or supernatural knowledge, they do serve a purpose in this age, in this life, while we see only partially and know only in part. But they will one day no longer be needed. Paul uses a powerful image to describe our current experience. For now we see in a mirror, dimly. In Paul's day, mirrors were made of polished metal. They gave you a blurry, incomplete reflection. You could see something, but not clearly exactly like a mirror today. Paul says that's what our knowledge of God and spiritual reality is like right now. We're seeing a reflection, not the full thing. But a day is coming when all of that changes. Then face to face. Then full knowledge. Then, finally, we will know God the way He has always fully known us. And this is one of the most astonishing lines in all of Scripture. If you sit and think about it, right now, this moment, God knows you fully. Every part of you. The part you're proud of, the part you've never told anyone about, the part you barely want to admit to yourself. He knows all of it, completely. And He loves you anyway. The day Paul is pointing to is the day when we will know Him with the same clarity that He knows us. When that mirror dimly becomes face to face. And what is one thing that lasts through all of that? It's love. Not prophecy or spiritual languages, not knowledge. Those things all belong to this age. Love belongs to eternity. Verse 13. But now faith, hope, and love remain. These three. The greatest of these is love. Paul closes out this chapter with a statement that has echoed through 2,000 years of Christian life. These three things, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. But why is love the greatest? Because faith will one day become sight. When we see God face to face, we will no longer need faith in the same way. hope will one day become fulfillment. When we arrive at the destination we are hoping toward, hope transforms into joy. But love doesn't transform into something else. It simply deepens. It never ends. It never becomes unnecessary. Even in eternity, love remains, because God is love. And to be with God forever is to be fully immersed in love forever. That's why Paul places it above everything else. Not because faith and hope don't matter, they absolutely matter, but because love is the one thing that doesn't point beyond itself to something greater. Love is the destination. To wrap it up, chapter 13 isn't a poem about feelings. It's Paul's most important corrective for everything that was going wrong in Corinth, and for everything that goes wrong in our own lives. Gifts without love are noise. Service without love gains nothing. The one thing that outlasts this world, that carries into eternity, is love. The Catechism puts it this way: charity upholds and purifies our human ability to love, and raises it to the supernatural perfection of divine love. In other words, the love Paul is describing isn't something we manufacture on our own. It's something God works in us as we open ourselves to Him. It's His love flowing through us toward the people around us. Here's something for us to think about. If I'm honest with myself, when I think about the people who are hardest for me to love right now, whether that's a difficult family member, a frustrating coworker, someone who has wronged me, which item on Paul's list is the hardest one to live out toward that specific person? That might be exactly where God is inviting us to grow. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.